I'm joined now by the Appropriations. Congressman, thanks so much for being here. Now, your Democratic colleagues announced a plan yesterday to force a vote on a clean spending bill using something called a discharge petition. How would that work, and how likely is it that you'll move forward with that?
Well, the way a discharge petition works is if the leadership in the House, the Speaker or committee chair, won't bring a bill to the floor, if you get a majority of members signing a petition, you can discharge it from committee. You can force a vote on it. That takes about a week, though, and none of us want to wait a week. At the same time, for the Republican members who've been saying they support a clean bill to open the government again, this really will put them to the test. Are they just saying that for consumption back home, or do they really mean it? If they really mean it, they'll sign the petition, and we can be guaranteed that this will end, at least on a date certain.
Now, of these piecemeal funding bills, you've said, quote, let's be honest about what the House leadership is really saying. We will choose hostage by hostage which agency of the government we will release. Now, as we just reported, the House unanimously approved this bill for back pay of furloughed federal workers. Why do you think this piece of piecemeal legislation got unanimous bipartisan support?
Well, this wasn't a piecemeal opening of the government or picking of choosing of agencies that we should let release one hostage at a time. This was instead letting the furloughed workers have the peace of mind of knowing they're going to get paid. Once the shutdown is over, they're going to get paid, so they can tell those that they're working with or owe bills to the company. And this, we have an ironic situation here where a speaker that has been talking about that being he'll be by a majority of the majority party, the GOP, has now moved to a place where it is the minority of the majority. The Tea Party is a part of that is driven by the fact that a lot of the non-Tea Party members have desperate fear that they'll have a Tea Party challenge if they support reopening the government. But we need the mainstream GOP basically to run their own House and put up this bill. And the President's right. If we took up a bill to fund the government today, it would have passed overwhelmingly.
Congressman, this week we heard from James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, in a hearing on Wednesday. Let's quickly listen to what he had to say.
This is a dreamland for Foreign Intelligence Service to recruit, particularly as our employees, already many of whom subject to furloughs driven by sequestration, are going to have, I believe, even greater
that work for the intelligence agencies. Analysts have done over the last several years is try to make sure all these intelligence agencies and domestic agencies talk to each other. So you have the FBI talking to the Department of Homeland Security, talking to the NSA, talking to CIA, so that we connect the dots. You can't basically say, well, we're going to fund certain dots and not others without having a real problem in terms of our ability to detect threats against the country.
Now, Secretary Kerry said this morning that while the shutdown is not a sign of, quote, weakness, it does hurt the that the U.S. sends to the rest of the world when we, quote, can't get our own act together. How do you think this is affecting foreign policy and our image on the global stage?
I think it's a terrific embarrassment, and more than that, when the President of the United States can't go on the trip to Asia to meet with some of our allies in the region because he's got to stay here because we have a dysfunctional government. I mean, it really makes us look ridiculous, and it's so painful to watch because it's so completely unnecessary. And beyond the impact it's having around the globe on our reputation is the fact that our economy still hasn't fully recovered. And I'm convinced that if we weren't going through these every other month man-made artificial crises, our economy would have recovered a long time ago. So Americans are paying a real price. Our credibility around the world is paying a real price. Our security is impaired, and it's all so completely unnecessary.
And when it comes to that, the issue of it being unnecessary, that this could be worked out, you know, you hear this drumbeat of Republican talking points that it's really the Democrats who are refusing to negotiate on anything. What's your response to that?
Well, I think you see some of the Republicans saying that publicly. What you hear them almost all saying privately is, in fact, I had one of my California Republican colleagues mention, you know, all that stuff you Democrats say about us, well, this time it's really true. The mainstream members of the GOP in Congress won't say publicly, but they will say privately, this is an internal problem of theirs. They've let the Tea Party kind of hijack the show. Senator Ted Cruz is the new Speaker of the House and is calling the shots. And now, you know, publicly GOP fight.
Congressman, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. The triple threat of